Mattawa. I'd like to welcome everyone for our official, to attend our official plan review and update. It's our kickoff. Just to give you a little bit of history, Mattawa had its first official plan in 1985, which I happened to be a councillor at the time. And I can tell you it's been revised once in 1991. So we're working with an extremely old plan. And the purpose of this right now is to bring us into the 21st century. And with no further delay, I'd like to introduce Anthony and Catherine from JP2G Consultant Inc. They're our planners of record, and it's going to be their show. So welcome to Mattawa, and thank you for doing this.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, everyone. My name, as the mayor mentioned, is Anthony Omick. I'm the manager of planning and senior planner at JP2G Consultants, joined by Catherine Curry, junior planner at JP2G, who is going to be doing the majority of the heavy lifting on this project. We've been retained, JP2G has been retained by the town of Mattawa to update the town's official plan. So the purpose of this evening's meeting, as Mr. Mayor mentioned, is to formally kick off the process of preparing a new official plan for the town. What we're going to do here with these few slides is we'll provide an overview of the planning policy framework that guides the preparation of official plans. We'll discuss a few key themes that are required to be included in the new official plan. We'll outline a timeline for the project. But the official plan is a document that should be shaped by the community and should be shaped by your input. So we thank those of you who have made the trip out tonight. And we welcome your questions. I think we can have a fairly informal Q&A at the end of this, but we can have certainly a Q&A at the end of the presentation. And then certainly just to note for everyone and for the mayor and councillor in attendance, tell everyone that comments are welcome throughout the entire process. This is not a one-shot deal for public comments. Really, it's an iterative process from start to finish. And we welcome comments from everyone right up to the very end when council is going to be considering adopting an official plan. Next slide, please. So first of all, let's discuss the planning policy framework in Ontario. First of all, we have the Planning Act, which is legislation by the province that governs all planning in Ontario. It requires municipalities to have an official plan in place. It provides for other tools such as the zoning bylaw, and it establishes approval processes for land development and requirements for public consultation like this meeting. Next, we have what's called the Provincial Planning Statement, which aims to optimize the use of land, resources, and public service facilities. And the Provincial Policy Statement also encourages healthy, livable, and safe communities, a range and mix of housing types and densities, a mix of long-term employment areas, efficient use of infrastructure, and compact development form. Lastly, being in Mattawa, we're also governed by the Growth Plan for Northern Ontario, which is another provincial document that provides guidance to align provincial decision-making and investment for economic and population growth in Northern Ontario. The key growth, there's 4 key growth management goals in the Growth Plan for Northern Ontario, which are diversification of the traditional resource-based industries, workforce education and training, integration of infrastructure investments and planning, and tools for Indigenous people's participation in the economy. So what is an official plan? So first, So what is an official plan? Well, an official plan is the primary policy document that guides the growth and development of the town of Mattawa. In the simplest terms, it contains goals, objectives, and policies which provide direction on how and where the town is to grow, typically over a 30-year time horizon. The official plan provides direction and answers questions on issues like where should the town grow, where should the town stay more or less the same, where do we need new roads, are there enough parks, how could we get more parks, where could we put more parks, how do we protect environmentally sensitive areas, and how do we protect ourselves from naturally occurring hazards like flooding. So as the mayor mentioned, the current official plan was adopted by council in 1991 ultimately approved by the Ministry of Municipal Affairs in 1995. So we are approaching the 40-year anniversary of the current official plan. So there's two reasons why we're updating the official plan. One is legal and one is much more practical. First, the Planning Act requires municipalities to update their official plan every 5 years, mostly in the interest of capturing matters of provincial interest and change of provincial legislation and direction that does evolve and change from time to time. And I'll speak a little bit more to this provincial direction in a couple of slides. The second reason for updating the plan, especially because it's been so long, is to reevaluate the plan, evaluate the goals that are in that plan, and determine if the goals and objectives in the current plan are still relevant. Which is interesting that some of the plan, some of the guiding principles in the current official plan are as current today as they were when they were written in the 90s. Such as the town functions as the service center for industry, residents in the surrounding area and travelers. Still very much relevant today. However, other guiding principles such as reference to population change from 1976 to 1990, less relevant and less helpful. It certainly bears specifically mentioning that one of the key exercises in this project is to update the mapping that's in the official plan. As you can see on the screen here, or can't see on the screen here, the land use map that is at the end of the official plan that shows you what all the properties within the town are designated is pretty hard to read. So one of the key exercises in this is to produce high quality GIS-based mapping that is current, includes all of the current property fabric in town, that makes planning, evaluating planning applications and navigating the planning process equally simpler for staff and residents and investors alike. Slide. As I noted previously, one of the key considerations in updating the official plan is the integration of the provincial planning statement into the official plan. So the Planning Act requires that the official plan is consistent with the PPS, and there are many instances in the PPS that explicitly direct municipalities on language that has to be in the official plan. A lot of municipalities choose to take this language from the PPS and include it verbatim in their official plans. We don't have to do that. We can craft Manitoba specific language, but there is very specific direction in the provincial policy statement on items that need to be in your official plan. So the provincial policy statement, what it used to be called, was first issued by the province in 1996. But that original document was rather permissive and discretionary and more broad visioning more than anything. The PPS that followed in 2005 was a much more prescriptive document, and this is where the province started to direct specific policy to local municipalities. The 2005 PPS was followed by a 2014 version, a 2020 version, and most recently a 2024 version that was had just come into force last month. And you may have heard of all kinds of changes that the Ford government has made over the past couple of years. The new provincial planning statement is one of them. The combination of, the combination rather of two key planning documents, the previous provincial policy statement and the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe, which is not relevant up here, but that was what the Doug Ford government did, was combine those two documents into a new provincial planning statement. So as you might expect, there is a fairly significant gap in the overarching policy framework that guided the 1995 town OP versus what we have to look at now. We've highlighted on the screen, I've listed them off, a number of what we see as the key policy requirements that are going to impact the plan as we go forward. And these are housing. So similarly, if you've heard anything about planning at all, you've probably heard about the provincial push to build more housing, including more affordable housing everywhere across the province. I think it goes without saying that we're in a housing crisis and we need more housing everywhere. And that goes for big cities, small towns, rural areas alike. So the OP will be updated to include contemporary housing policies that will serve to enable growth. Intensification and redevelopment is a significant theme in the PPS. The PPS, as I sort of touched on earlier, directs the majority of growth to take place where there are existing municipal services, being water and sewer, Mattawa having water and sewer services, that's great for intensification. And the PPS is directing municipalities to not do and not encourage unjustified and uneconomical expansion of municipal infrastructure. So we'll also have to incorporate policies about additional residential units, another way where we can encourage more small A affordable housing. Land use compatibility is a fundamental part of land use planning, and that is the compatibility of uses and how they can coexist together. So there are current separation distances in the provincial planning statement and other ministerial documents that speak to the distance that should separate, say, a residential dwelling and a gravel pit, or a residential dwelling and an industrial use like a lumber yard. Next is engagement with Indigenous communities. So not only is this best practice, the right thing to do, it's also now a requirement under the PPS and not currently addressed in our OP that we're working with right now. Climate change is another key item that's in the PPS. Acknowledgement of climate change is required in official plans moving forward, and especially as it relates to building and fostering sustainable infrastructure, sustainable built form, and growth management. A new one in the 2024 PPS that wasn't in the 2020 PPS is economic diversification, which is very much promoted now in the PPS. And there's an opportunity to improve and enhance the economic development policies that are already in the current official plan, where we can look to expand those permissions with things that touch on home occupation and home industry, and the significance of tourism, the potential for growth, short-term rentals, for example, as a couple of examples of issues and opportunities that were certainly not around in the 90s. Next are hazard lands. So there are policies that will be required to prohibit development, prohibit site alteration, and direct development away from hazards, so floodplains, for example, to reflect current best practices and current standards. Efforts should be made, and we will be working with the Conservation Authority with respect to the new mapping to ensure that the mapping to illustrate where those hazards are is as accurate and up to date as possible. And there's also a relatively new theme and a new direction in PPS where we will be required to map out wildland fire hazards. Moving along, natural heritage resources, another major theme in the PPS. So policies and mapping will need to recognize any natural heritage features that are identified in the community. Resource mappings, similarly, we will have to identify any mineral aggregate resources that are ensured so that they can be protected. And again, we rely on assistance from the province where they have up-to-date mapping at various ministries that will be fed into the process that will help us create the most accurate and up-to-date schedules for the town of Mattawa. And lastly, there will be, typically there's a number of general housekeeping changes that are required to be made to an official plan when you're moving from your existing one to a new one. What I think we're going to end up doing in this situation is a brand new official plan. Typically, as I mentioned earlier, the province says you have to update your official plan every 5 years. Given it's been so long, probably makes the most sense to repeal and replace with a brand new. And then the nice thing about doing a brand new plan is you actually get 10 years from the adoption of that plan to do your next update. You can do it more frequently if you like. You can do it at the 5-year mark if you like, but it gives you that ability to extend to 5 to 10 years if you don't need to make any changes. And I'll talk a little bit about that in another couple of minutes. Yes, please. Just a little bit about the process schedule and where we're at. So we initiated the project with an internal kickoff meeting with staff in September. Tonight is the required under the Planning Act special public meeting to formally kick off the process to the public. On December 2nd, in a couple of weeks, we have a pre-consultation meeting with various provincial ministries who will provide their specific advice and guidance and mapping on how to shape the new OP from the province's perspective. In December and January, we will continue to engage with the provincial stakeholders as well as any local stakeholder groups and to the public. And we are also intending to complete one-on-one interviews with senior municipal staff and with all members of council to solicit feedback on direction for where they would like to see the official plan direction go. In March, we will aim to bring a directions report to council. And the purpose of that directions report is to summarize in greater detail the PPS themes that we will have to touch on, and to request and seek direction from council on our path forward to creating ultimately a new draft official plan for public consideration and for council consideration. Once we have this direction, then we will proceed to prepare a brand new draft official plan document, and we'll have another round of open houses and public consultation. And then ultimately, the last stage is for council to be satisfied with the draft official plan. Council to say that they adopt the official plan, and then it goes on to Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing for their ultimate approval. So to summarize, we're in the very early days of this project, and as I mentioned, we welcome feedback from everybody throughout the process. As I noted, we're aiming to prepare a report and seek direction from council in early 2025. And the aim is to have the entire project wrapped up by the end of 2025, if not sooner if we can, and then have it sent off to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs for their approval by the end of next year. Slide. Last slide. Questions, comments, feedback. I've left the key contacts up on the screen. Paul, Melody, myself, and Catherine. Feel free to take a picture of our emails if you have any feedback, anything comes to you on your drive home or the next couple of days. Feel free to send us questions, comments, anything you'd like to know about the project. And thank you all for signing in. We've got your contact information there. So without further ado, any questions or comments from members of the public or councilors in attendance? Thank you. Anybody? Good. Did a great job, guys.
I think a good point you made, Vinny, was that this is not the only opportunity for the public and the residents to make comments. They'll get another chance at the first draft. Is that when it is, the next public consultation?
The next public consultation will, yes, likely be when we have, well, the next opportunity for public input formally will be when our report goes on the council agenda early in the new year, seeking direction to move forward. Because we won't want to spend a great deal of time drafting up the official plan until basically what we'll present to council is an outline of maybe, call it an annotated outline of what the plan is going to look like. So we'll give you a table of contents with the key themes from the PPS, as I mentioned, and then we'll run that through council with feedback. That'll be at a regular council meeting, so members of the public can attend and ask questions at that point as well. But then, as I mentioned, feedback all the way throughout. There will be certain milestones where, say, if we're preparing a report for a March 15 council meeting, there'll be a cutoff where if you send me an email on March 14th, I won't be able to get it in the report for council, but we'll still do everything we can to incorporate public feedback all throughout the process.
Yeah, so you had mentioned it's repeal and replace type official plan. Now, in the past, I would imagine that the official plan that's in place was similar to another small town in Ontario. Are there small towns in Ontario that you're looking at to mimic the official plan or to use as kind of a starting point, or are you just starting from scratch?
No, we will draw on JP2G's done, I don't even know, dozens of official plans all over Eastern Ontario in the past 30 years plus. So we'll draw on a whole host of other examples and other work that we've done recently. But however, I most recently worked on an official plan update for the township of South Algonquin with a similar context in terms of diversity of employment uses, seasonal population, seasonal residents, that sort of thing, tourism. However, the sort of main difference between Southern Mountain and Mattawa is they don't have any municipal services. So that's, we'll look at other official plans as, let's say, inspiration, but really it's a brand new document for the town of Mattawa, specifically tailor-made for the town. With one caveat being a lot of that provincial language is going to be fairly similar to what the province wants to see. Maybe I mentioned at this point, I know we've mentioned in some of our internal meetings, that with the province as the approval authority, the process doesn't actually give us the opportunity for feedback and back and forth with the province. We will get some shots at consultation, like this pre-consultation meeting we have in a couple of weeks. But when the official plan is adopted by council, it goes to the ministry and it will come back with their changes. We don't get any back and forth. They don't send us their draft changes for us to say, okay, looks good. They'll send back what the province thinks is what it needs to look like. So
Hopefully determine that.
basically, it's an exercise of looking at the provincial policy statement. Implementing, making sure that all of the
So they got a
provincial,
big stick. then.
there is a big thing. Yeah. So part of,
How does that help us?
it helps us with a lot of the policy that I can say as a professional planner is important stuff. Like,
I'm not saying it's not important, I'm
Yeah.
just saying that their point of looking at how they think that Mattawa should be based on God knows what. It may not be the same as what the people who live in Mattawa think that it should be.
it's 100% right.
So, does our input count?
So part of what I was just gonna touch on, part of the exercise is for us and everyone, council alike and residents alike, is working on crafting language that is aligned with provincial policy. Doesn't go contrary to provincial policy, so they don't have to strike it.
I understand that, but
Right.
just,
We do have to be careful with the language we have in the official plan because the province can just strike it out with a pen and change it, so.
And just to follow it up, so you mentioned earlier 1984 was the original document, so it's approaching 40, I guess it is 40 years, right? And the iteration was 91.
Yes,
With this official plan moving forward, how often should or will our iterations be? Because you also did mention it has about a 30-year shelf life, right?
so it's, typically the way, an official plan is a long-term visioning exercise, so you typically look at a 30-year time horizon. And then the planning act requires a new official plan to be updated after 10 years, and then every 5 years after that. That's the minimum requirement of the planning act. If council so chose to update the official plan year 2, you could. It's just a year-long process. And it requires us to go through all this again, and typically there's no need to do that, sort of. I think it's evolved that 5 years is a good interval to assess if the official plan is working. So sort of what you would do is you're testing, town adopts a new official plan, in 5 years, you've had no official plan amendment applications, then the plan is probably working.
You just answered my question. Amendments are part of the system also,
That's right. So,
within the 5 years.
yes,
This presentation, can we share it with
absolutely.
constituents? Okay,
Absolutely.
number one. Number two, you mentioned about senior staff and each and every counselor going to be interviewed to get their ideas where they want the municipality to go.
Yep.
What time frame was that again?
We will be reaching out, and probably through Melody and Paul, we'll be reaching out for availability and for contact info from counselors. We'd like to get those interviews done, let's say by the end of January.
Okay, so if you pick, let's say, January 15th and only 4 are available, are you gonna be able to do a second round kind of thing to get? Because sometimes conflicts happen, or is it one and done?
No, certainly we'll do everything we can to accommodate schedules. I know maybe you're going to Florida, is that what you're saying, not gonna be available on February?
No, I'm not.
But we'll certainly do everything we can to accommodate, schedules of staff and counselors for these interviews. Obviously, we'll want to keep the project on track, so if a counselor isn't available for 2 months, 3 months, we probably aren't gonna delay the whole project. for that.
Gotcha. If a
We might
counselor-
rely on you to draw your colleagues if we can't get
And
hold of them.
virtual arrangements could be made in the case of
Oh, 100%, we can do
the
that.
counselor's gone for an amount of time, okay.
100%, we can do it on the phone, doesn't have to be in person or even on Teams or Zoom. It's a good phone call.
Thank you.
And we'll typically, the way we do those interviews is we'll prepare a list of 10 or 12 questions that we'll send to you in advance, so that you can have some time to think about it, so it's not a newspaper reporter interview asking for your thoughts on the spot.
Will council be in some way polling the residents to get opinion on or suggestions for the direction? of how they take it?
I'm gonna turn that over to Anthony, because they're the driving force. We're not planners, they are, So
I understand that, but I'm just saying.
but he's gonna have that answer for you.
Yeah, I mean, the simplest answer to that is that that's what we're trying to do with this, with meetings like this. The notice for this meeting's in the paper twice. So we're trying to get the word out as much as possible. We're gonna try and put together, and I'm gonna work with Melody to hopefully put a page on the town website, if we can do that, where we can post all of these documents. So relying on the town website, hopefully the town Facebook page, and word of mouth. Well, it's probably the best way to do it, where I don't think, I mean, maybe I would throw it back to council or staff to discuss, and probably won't answer your question tonight, but it might be worth thinking about a mailer, depending on where things are at with tax bills or any other notices that the town might mail out, that sort of thing. You can always put a flyer in with those. So I don't think we would anticipate door to door, or I don't think we would anticipate a
So
survey.
I wasn't thinking that, but I was thinking if there was a, on the town's page, for instance,
Yeah.
if there was a spot where people could, you know.
Yeah.
Give their 2 cents.
Absolutely. I think what we'll try to do too, if we can, we'll try to set up a specific email address that might be like official plan update at mattawa.ca, and if we're able to do that, or if we can't do it on the town, I know, Melody, we can talk about that. If the town, can't host it, we can probably do the JP2G, and then we'll have something like that. So
I think the goal here is to have the best possible plan for what's Mattawa gonna look like in 30 years from now.
absolutely.
And yes, transparency is important. This is not gonna be done behind closed doors. It's gonna be an open process. So then, again, we can't go knocking on doors, but we can put it out there, and people can express their opinions, absolutely. I think that was your message right off the get-go, and I support that 100%.
And I think we'll, in a second, we'll take as long as we need. Obviously, we've said we'd like to get this done by the end of next year. If it bleeds into the following year, because we all of a sudden get a rush of people who want to be involved in the process, and we have focus groups or any sort of meetings like that, we're obviously happy to do that. As planners, we want to see that public engagement. That's a big part of the process. So we will take as long as it takes to get the plan right.
And if we want to remain sustainable, we need growth, so we need to get it right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I was just gonna say for the public consultation that maybe something like a Survey Monkey online survey or something like that linked from our website.
Sure.
Public can put their input in. I'd be curious as a counselor to see the results of that from the public to help guide my decisions, but.
Sure.
Anthony, we talked about tonight pretty well exclusively about the official plan. But there's another 2-word expression that often accompanies the official plan, and that's the zoning bylaw.
Yes.
And maybe you could just touch a little bit about that as to how that will evolve.
Sure. So when we talk about planning from 10,000 feet down to ground level, I talked about sort of overarching and guiding provincial documents. From the provincial documents, you work your way down to the official plan, and then the official plan speaks to broad land use categories across the municipality. So a residential area or an industrial area. And then the zoning bylaw is the tool that's used to implement that vision of the official plan. To say, on this residentially designated property, you can do this, you can build this kind of house, or an industrial property, you can do these uses on it. So the zoning bylaw is what implements the official plan on the grounds, and typically best practice is to update the official, or sorry, update the zoning bylaw kind of immediately once you're done the official plan update. So that is also that's the plan here as well. So we didn't really talk about it. The zoning bylaw is also equally dated, and so it certainly needs to be updated as well. It's times right to do both at the same time.
Okay, thanks, Anthony. And last thing for me is, there is an individual online, if that individual can hear me, just like to take the opportunity to ask them if they have a question for you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes,
Sure. Thanks. Thanks a lot for allowing me to join in and hear the presentation. So I think it's fantastic that we're doing this. I'm on my way home, so I'm driving right now. So unfortunately, I can't put on my video. But just to kind of introduce myself, my name is Daniel Mercer. I'm also a planner, an RPP and an MCIP. I used to sit on the board of the Canadian Institute of Planners. I don't live in Mattawa, but I have a property in Papineau, Cameron, as a seasonal property. I'm division leader for community planning in the municipality of Lakeshore, which is in Southern Ontario. So I think it's amazing that Mattawa, so I'm very interested from kind of the regional perspective, and obviously how Mattawa associates and participates, I guess, in the regional economy. You know, and sort of like kind of how that affects kind of not only the town inside, but then outside, and then how we can kind of use that town plan to encourage and sort of even attract sustainable development right into Mattawa. So I guess what I would say, and I guess my main question is, so I'm obviously very familiar with planning and official plans from my profession. But I think what I would say is that it's a fantastic opportunity to not only talk about the legislative requirement of the official plan, but also to do a huge community visioning exercise. So, I mean, obviously, as we said, this one was out of date, but the community plan or the official plan itself is just a tool to be able to push that vision forward. But there's a great opportunity to envision with the community what we'll be looking like in 30 years. And actually to attract growth. So in other words, you know, it's about 2,500 people right now. Why can't we set an objective and plan for 10,000 within the planning horizon of 25,000 people, and then also set out actions to be able to get there, right? So I think it's a huge opportunity to actually re-envision Mattawa as something that kind of can help even grow the near north, right? And sort of do a lot more. So there's lots of good opportunities, I think, to sort of do great public consultation and Indigenous consultation, and sort of come up with those kind of strategies. So I'm kind of looking forward to how that sort of plays out, and then not only thinking about the tool, the official plan, and the legislative tool, the provincial legislative tool, but also how it can be used as an opportunity to even sort of attract and encourage growth in the community and really help drive you know, sustainable development for sure. So yeah, looking forward to participating any way I can. So thanks.
That's great feedback. Really appreciate that, and hope you'll have a keen eye to reviewing the draft for us. All right.
thanks for that. Last call for questions. Any other questions for?
Not having an official plan, does that hold any development, product development?
Does it hold up?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it does. You know, a lot of people, I shouldn't speak in generalities like that, but and not from personal experience, but I would suggest that perhaps having an official plan that is antiquated and zoning bylaw that's antiquated is certainly not promoting new development and not promoting new growth, where somebody might come into town and call into the office and say, hey, I'd like to get a copy, I'd like to see what my property is zoned and designated, look at it and say, oh, I gotta do an official plan amendment, I gotta do zoning bylaw amendment, I'm not interested, it's too much work. So what we'd like to do is foster growth and development by bringing that, and I think as that gentleman mentioned, that visioning exercise, this is the opportunity to demonstrate and to show where we want growth to happen in the town. And enable it by introducing flexible policies and growth enabling language. Answer your question?
Yes, I might have worded it wrong. So if we wanted to build a warehouse,
Sure.
I mean, I'm sure everybody knows. If we want to build a warehouse, does that any delays in it?
Does that, sorry?
Is he gonna put any delay on building a warehouse?
Well, like if you were to, a hotel, Sure.
Let's put, and it's not a hotel, by the way. I'm using the word hotel because.
sure. We can use your hotel or warehouse, doesn't matter. On either example, we would have to look at, is your question, is this process gonna delay you if you wanted to do
Yes,
something
if we
more?
wanted to develop, you get a delay but not having an official plan.
No, in that you could make an application, right, like, there's no stop on current. The ability for you to make an application right now, if you wanted to make an application tomorrow for a hotel.
Yeah.
Depending where it is, you
Yeah.
file your official plan amendment, if you
Yeah.
need it, you
Yeah.
file your zoning bylaw amendment. And we would review it against the current documents.
Okay, that's it. That's answer my question.
Legally, we review it against the current documents, but then we would also look at that from a contemporary lens.
Going forward.
Is that even where we want?
Yeah, that's it, yeah,
Right.
that's good.
And I think where we'll want some of that participation from members of the community, members of the business community, is to come to us and say, look, my property is zoned, or sorry, my property is designated industrial, but I don't think it should be, or my property is designated residential, I think I'd like it to be designated something else. We can evaluate those requests at this point too.
I think that's, you kind of hit what I was gonna drive home there is that, I don't think that this stops the town of Mattawa from in Doug Ford's words, being open for business. In the meantime, we do have an official plan. It's 40 years old or 30 years old or whatever the last date was. It's as old as I am. But we do have the ability to make amendments to that in the meantime, and those amendments would probably be brought forth in the next document, right? And kind of brought into that. So I would say that we're still open for business and we're still looking for any development opportunities that people do have. I don't think that we're looking to stop those while we develop this document.
And I think maybe even just to touch on that a little bit more, what we might do is we would encourage, say, if somebody was looking to build a warehouse, looking to build a hotel, we'd say, or staff would say, reach out to JP2G, talk to them, because it might be such that, the vision is going in that direction anyways, and we might say, wait a year, and then you won't have to pay for an official plan amendment, you won't have to pay for a zoning bylaw amendment, because we're gonna update the plan, and it's going to enable things like, even something as simple as a secondary unit in a detached house, not permitted in the current framework, because it just wasn't contemplated at the time. So that's contemporary planning to enable additional residential units in detached houses. So something like that, if somebody came and said, oh, I want to build a triplex, we'd say, well, we're probably gonna do that, we're probably gonna make that change. And so you probably just want it. So there's two sides to that coin. I think to borrow your phrase, certainly nothing is gonna change status quo. In terms of if you wanted to make an application tomorrow, we'll still process it, we'll work with you. But at the same time, we're gonna have to official plan to bring it into the 21st century.
And then one of the big tickets, and let's not hide from it, is the 240 plus acres that we're hoping to develop to its maximum. It's not included in our official plan.
That's right.
So right there.
That's right.
So we need this document moving forward.
What is the vision for that acreage?
Well, there's more than one vision, but a lot of it is residential. And when we say residential, all types, from tiny homes to affordable housing to regular housing to estate housing. 240 acres is a lot of land.
Yep.
And on the south side of the road, we're hoping to you know, keep the, what started this whole process, the light industrial, thing. We have 4 huge lots there. You know, the road, which is large at that area, 86 feet wide, plus, you know, some, natural, boundary trees and that. So it's gonna be secluded and, but that's our vision at the moment, but it's a living document. You know, it changes daily. As a matter of fact, I just got a new map of our concept just today, so.
Right.
You know, so we, everybody's throwing their ideas, we're far from, we're not gonna build homes tomorrow morning, that's for sure.
Yeah.
You know, but we need industry. Doesn't have to be large, you know, but we need industry, and when you got industry, you need accommodations. You know, and before we thought we'd get industry, but where are people gonna live? Where does the workforce come from? You know, and I know that our tax rates are high, you know, because we've got a lot of services to uphold. And that's when I say we gotta become more sustainable, it's gonna be through growth. You know, controlled growth, and hopefully this plan helps us to get there.
And I think that ties into nicely to what the gentleman on the phone said, is that, you know, when we're talking about enabling growth, that's the town putting forward 240 acres plus of its own land for growth, to foster growth, to attract yield.
You know, and who we doing this for? For our grandchildren.
Yeah,
You know?
exactly.
Because, you know, I'm one of the lucky ones. My whole family lives here. My grandchildren live here, and I know a lot of people would swap with me. But I'd like to make sure that everybody in this town has the same opportunity.
Any other questions?
Sorry, I'm just gonna make a comment, that if you are interested in providing some feedback, we do have some, comment forms that you're welcome to fill out and either leave with us or email back to us. And at any time during the process, we welcome, emailed comments regarding your ideas or anyone's ideas, for the official plan.
And for that, and thanks for that, Catherine, and, we will put open up a section on our website. GP2GS provided me with a copy of today's presentation, that'll go in there, and then we'll use that as a repository for all documents. It'll be open for everybody to see.
Yep.
And including the the comment form, and then people can access it there, and, closing words, Mr. Mayor?
I'm glad it's kicked off. Well, we had to kick off. I'm glad we got the first public meeting, yeah. And in short order, we're meeting with municipal affairs.
December 2nd.
So, you know, I'm really happy to see this. It's not time to campaign, but that was part of my campaign, that we update all our documents. Cause I don't like the fact that we were turning down chances for investors to come in and make our town better.
Yeah.
You know, and with the documents that reflect the times and the needs, it's certainly gonna put us in a better light.
Agreed, and certainly outside of my wheelhouse, but not having a current official plan is a detriment to the town making applications to various funding sources at the provincial level. So it's certainly necessary to have that in place when the province says, okay, well, what are you gonna do with the money? Then you can show, here's a current 2025 official plan of where the town's gonna grow. So
You mean it's a red flag when we send our typewritten?
There you go. So,
Yes.
thank you, GP2G, Anthony, Catherine. Thank you for everybody who's attended, both in person and online. Thank you so much. We will have other meetings, and we look forward to the feedback. This is an important step for the town of Ottawa, and to have an official plan, and looking forward to the end of 25 and having that new plan. So thank you.
yes, thank you very much.